For millennia, as long as gold has served as currency, a span of about 5,000 years across diverse civilizations that never even knew of each other, its worth has been anchored by one core idea. Its supply, people believe, was fixed by the earth itself. No one, it was assumed, could simply make it. The only gold available was what had already been extracted from the ground, and the speed at which more gold joined the global supply depended on the laws of physics and never depended on a government or an organization. That foundational belief, however, isn't entirely correct. Gold, it turns out, can indeed be created. The process is known as nuclear transmutation, and scientists have in fact been successfully generating gold atoms in their labs since the mid-20th century, building on theoretical ideas first put forth in the 1920s. This method involves striking other elements with particles or neutrons in carefully controlled environments. The bombardment continues until the atomic structure changes and new gold atoms appear. The material produced through this means is chemically indistinguishable from gold mined from the earth. The reason this hasn't transformed the global gold market, and why it likely won't, boils down to straightforward economics. The sheer amount of energy, the specialized machinery, and the time needed to create even a single gram of gold through nuclear transmutation far outweigh what that gram is worth on the open market. The quantities produced are very small, individual atoms or at most micrograms from each experiment. No central bank is stocking its reserves with gold made in a lab. However, this difference between something that cannot be done and something that can be done, but at a cost that makes it economically insignificant, is a fine point to be clearly comprehended, as it is far from a minor detail. In the entire sweep of human history, all the gold ever brought to the surface totals somewhere between 216,000 and 220,000 tons. This figure includes every coin, every bar, every piece of jewelry, and every central bank's reserves combined. Annual mining operations typically add about 3,600 tons to this amount each year, representing roughly 1 to 2% of the total. Largely because new deposits are proving increasingly difficult to locate and more costly to develop. Of this entire above-ground supply, only an estimated 50,000 tons are considered freely available and tradable at any given moment. The rest remains tied up in jewelry, long-held institutional reserves, and private collections that aren't easily sold. The very history of financial policy offers its own proof of gold scarcity acting as a real limitation. When nations adhered to the gold standard, their governments were obligated to ensure their currency was supported by real gold reserves. As economies grew and the need for money intensified, maintaining this rigid system became harder and harder. Governments didn't react by creating more gold. Instead, they chose to abandon the standard altogether. In the late 1990s, central banks offloaded substantial parts of their gold reserves to increase liquidity, which temporarily drove prices down. Yet they then spent the next 2 decades repurchasing what they had sold, often at significantly higher prices, simply because once the gold was gone, it couldn't be magically brought back into existence to replace what had been lost. Gold scarcity is undeniable, carrying real implications for the functioning of the global financial system. However, it's crucial to grasp that this scarcity isn't as absolute as it's frequently told. It's more of an economic scarcity than a strictly physical one. The supply cannot be significantly increased, not because expanding it is theoretically impossible, but because the expense involved makes any such attempt practically pointless. For 5 millennia, this practical irrelevance has been enough to uphold gold's role as a store of value that no government can simply debase. Whether this continues indefinitely, like most matters in economics, depends on the current conditions rather than an unchangeable natural law.
If you understood today's video, then be sure to like the video